she in your time. The mammals are your favorite type, and you want her tonight. Heartbeat, increasing heartbeat. You hear the thunder of step beating. Rhinos, elephants, attacking tigers. This town ain't big enough for the both of us.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Sparks Entertainment and Art, where we look at all aspects of the band Sparks from many, many perspectives. And I am very fortunate today to have with me Tim Hilleard, whose company, Pale Wizard Records, has just released a brand new compilation of Kimono My House. It is called Sparks Kimono My House 50 Years Later. It is a wonderful compilation. I've listened to it a few times and I can't stop listening to it. And I'm so happy that Tim has agreed to join me today to talk about what went into making this record and how you can get it. So with that, Tim, let me welcome you to the show.
Thanks, Monte. It's really good to be here. Thanks for that lovely introduction.
Well, absolutely. It is really great. And you are joining us today from Bath in the UK. Is that right?
Yes, Bath. We're in the southwest of England, and it's very, very wet and windy here today, as it pretty much always is, it seems, at the moment.
It is wet and windy here today. So for all we could be neighbors right now.
We could be.
So what I'd like to do, I'd like to talk about this exciting release from your company, but first let's talk about you and your company a little bit, and then we'll talk about the record, because what I'm interested in is, who are you? Tell us a little bit about your record company, and tell us what made you decide that this was going to be the album that you wanted to release.
Okay. So Pale Wizard Records is a relatively new record label that me and my colleague Dan Flickroft started a few years back in a studio called Stage 2 Studios in Bath in England. I joined in 2020 now. During the pandemic, we really didn't have very much to do. We couldn't trade as a business because of the lockdowns, so the studio was closed. So we decided to sort of do a tribute album to the Alice Cooper album Killer, which came out in 1971. So that was our original plan, was to do like a 50th anniversary tribute album to the Alice Cooper album Killer. I've got one here on CD. And it was going to be a one and done kind of thing. We pulled together some bands for that, and we thought, yeah, that's good. That came out really well. But then it sort of came, why don't we do another one? Why don't we make this into a series? So we kind of argued between us for a while on what to do next. And then we settled on doing Ziggy Stardust. There was the second one. That was 1972's 50 Years Later.
Yeah, it's great too, by the way. I've been able to listen to part of that one.
Yeah. Again, with a whole different load of bands on there from all over the world. And then we kind of thought, yeah, we're liking this. Let's keep going. So, and because me and Dan have got quite different tastes of music, I guess, it became a bit of a more and more of an argument as it went on, what we were going to do for 1973. We had so many things in mind, but they became either prohibitively expensive because they were going to be a double album, so we need so many bands to do it, or it just probably wouldn't work with the style of music we do. So we ended up compromising, and I said to Dan, well, you can choose 1973 if I can choose 1974, because I knew what I wanted to do for 1974. So from 1973, it was Budgie. So I don't know if you know Budgie, the Welsh heavy metal band that
Sure.
he's a big fan of. Not really my kind of thing, but I thought this turned out really well. Actually, it's a really good tribute to the original record. But that gave me free reign to do 1974, and that gave me the chance to do Kimono My House for this year's release, which is out on May the 1st, which is 50 years later to the day that the original album came out.
Well, I will let everybody know that it should be out right now, because this is going to be broadcast a few days after that. So it is available right now, which is pretty exciting. Yeah.
It should be available on all streaming services as well for people that don't want to, people that don't go out and buy physical media. I know everyone does these days. You should be able to listen to it on your Spotify and your Apple Music and all that, wherever you are in the world. I know there's certain countries have certain rights issues with cover versions on streaming. So it might not be available absolutely everywhere on streaming, but it really does depend on the country you're in. But the physical version's available everywhere, of course. You can listen to CDs and records wherever you are in the world. That's the good thing about them.
How did you find the bands to record the songs?
For Sparks or for everything? Are you asking
For your compilation for Sparks? Yeah.
for
How did you
Spark?
find the bands? Yeah. And I should point out, because people always ask this when I talked to my last guest, that, it's all fully licensed by the band, or they are aware of this, right?
I would hope by now they're aware of it. Yeah, we'll be sending them a nice big check for it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very good.
they're fully licensed. Yeah, in this country, is a company called PRS which deal with all the sort of the rights for music. So we apply for a license for every song on the. I've actually had to fill out a form saying who wrote the original song, and obviously it's all Ron Mail, apart from I think 2 tracks. Russell's got a co-writing track, so he's going to get a nice big check for us. So it's
Cool.
officially licensed, yeah. So I know a few people have been in touch with that concern that we're trying to just copy the songs and not give them their due. Where it is important that obviously we license these songs because we're selling them. So it would be wrong, I think, to make a profit off of other people's art.
Yeah. No, it's just good to have that on the record so everybody will know,
Yeah,
because
yeah, of
it always
course.
comes up. But let's go back to my other question. How did you choose the bands to record these songs?
So I some of these bands on here we've worked with before at the studio. Some of them are local to us. Some of them are bands that I've kind of heard of in the touring scene in the UK, and some of them are just bands that I found online and thought these guys have got that kind of something a little bit different that I think Sparks have, and I think that they would make a good Sparks cover. The interesting thing I found with everybody that I did approach, pretty much 90% of them were Sparks fans or
Really?
appreciated Sparks. It reminded me of what Edgar Wright said about when he made the documentary about Sparks, where he said that most of the people that he approached thinking they might be Sparks fans because they appeared to have that kind of little bit of extra and whatever it is they do, were actually Sparks fans, and it was a similar thing with me. Yeah, there are a lot of the bands like, yeah, of course, I love Sparks. We'll be involved. The Dan, the co-owner of Pale Wizard, said to me, "You won't find bands for Sparks. It's too out there. It's a bit too much. It's a bit too beyond our wheelhouse." And well, as you can see, we managed to find them. Yeah, a couple of them are very local to us. Foxshaw, who did This Town, that's our engineer in the studio. He's the guy who produced most of the music on there.
Hmm.
That's the band. He's the guitar player in that band. Sergeant Thunderhoof, who did Thank God It's Not Christmas. That's the singer in that band is Dan, the co-owner of Pale Wizard. So there is it's a real family affair. We've got all the bands that have ever featured on our label do feature on the Sparks one, which is nice.
So, was it a little intimidating to do This Town, just because everybody knows it? Everybody's going to be listening to that one.
I know everybody wanted that one,
Ah,
obviously, as well,
yeah.
because you know, originally we were going to try and go the whole hog with it and do a music video as well, but that unfortunately didn't work out. But yeah, it is an intimidating track to take on because all eyes would be on you, and it was going to be the lead single from the song. And I think the band Foxjaw kind of deserved to do it because they had a bit of a rough time over the last couple of years through a few sort of factors outside the band that were affecting them. So to do a track like that really seemed to sort of chime with them as well. So it gave them a bit of a sense of purpose to sort of to do that track. And I think they really did it well.
So
I
you
was
have
surprised.
a personal relationship with all of these bands, it seems.
Well, yeah, not all. I mean, let's for example talk about the band Chaos Manaut. I think they're from the US. They were a band that just emailed the label on the off chance. They'd put together a single track, which was like 30 minutes, I think. And it's quite heavy doom metal with lots of elements of almost like black metal and death metal, so quite extreme stuff. And they'd emailed us sort of asking if we'd be interested in putting it out. And we sort of talked about it because we both liked how different it was, but we thought, well, what could we do with you can't put a 30-minute track on vinyl because you have to split it. You've got a limit of how much you can have on one side of vinyl. So we were discussing it, and then we sort of thought, well, let's pass on this, but let's offer them the chance to do Sparks and see what they say. And they didn't know Sparks. They were one of the few bands that didn't even really know Sparks at all.
Mhm.
And I gave them a choice of, I think it was 3 songs that we had left at the time, and said, go away, listen to these songs, see what you think. And they come back and said, yeah, we want to do Complaints.
Complaints
I
is
thought,
great.
and I was really impressed with it. Considering they're a band, like I said, they're a young band, and we didn't really know other than this one long 30-minute song, which is as far removed from Sparks as you could possibly imagine.
Uh-huh.
So it was great to have this back and have something that was so humorous and so capturing the spirit of what Sparks is about.
They really brought something to it and made it
Yeah.
wonderful. It's one of my favorites. Well, I like all of them, but yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a great rendition.
Thank you. Yeah, I was delighted with what they did. Well, I was delighted with what everybody did because I was, when we first planned it out, I was kind of told by a few people, yeah, you'll never find bands to do Sparks. You'll never find, especially heavy bands. It won't translate. And I sort of thought to myself, I think it will. I think because the music is so, if the quality is there in the songs, you can turn it into anything, And there's some cover versions on there which sound nothing like Sparks, nothing like the original song. Hasta Mañana, for example, is completely rebuilt from the ground up. Only the lyrics are the same.
Yeah. There's enough similarities there, but I like it when a band takes a song and makes it their own. But
Yeah.
keeping the original spirit of the song, I think they do it exactly right on Hasta Mañana.
Yeah, it's
I like it all. You're not going to hear anything negative from me, just so you know.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. I was expecting a little bit of criticism.
How can you criticize these artists who went and recorded something and put themselves into it and made these wonderful covers of these songs?
I know I sent them all an email recently because we need to send them all some copies as well, just asking them for their addresses and what to send their vinyls and their CD to. And I just said again, you've all knocked it out of the park. You were all just brilliant. I couldn't have, when we first started the early stages of planning it, I didn't think it would turn out like this. I didn't think it would be this good. I'm
You said
delighted.
something interesting about the heaviness of some of the songs. So there are two questions I have. One is your label a heavy metal label? Is that how you characterize yourself? But the second question is about, there seems to be a disparity as I listen to the first side and the second side, where the first side really is a little bit heavier, whereas the second side is a little bit more, not creative, but a little bit more varied in the approaches that the artists take. And I'm wondering how that came about, if you agree with that. Two questions.
I've never looked at it like that before, but I'm guessing looking at what's on there, I think that's a happy accident. It turned out that way. It wasn't by design that, some of the more experimental, Equator, for example, is quite experimental. And the Crooked Tongue one, Hasta Mañana. I think and probably the first side is a bit heavier. That is a complete accident. I didn't mean to do that. It just kind of happens that the bands that we allocated the tracks to, maybe the heavier ones are on the first side. I wouldn't call Pale Wizard a heavy metal label per se. It's heavy rock what we do. The main band that are on our label, Sergeant Thunderhoof, who are on the Kimono CD and vinyl, what they do isn't probably metal. It's more sort of like stoner rock, sort of desert rock, that kind of thing, hard rock. It kind of, some of it can be as heavy as metal. I mean, would you say that there's anything that's heavy metal on this CD?
No, not necessarily, just harder. The first side seems to be like This Town, perfect example. That's a very hard rocking song, the way he does it, and I love it. And I love what he brings to it. Then the second side, you get the things like Complaints and Equator, which are just, and Talent is an Asset, which I would not put as particularly heavy, but I like your word for it, more experimental.
Yeah, well, Silvery, Talent is an Asset. Silvery are a band that I didn't really know. Silvery were, when I first sort of thought we're going to do the Sparks album, I went into the Sparks groups on Facebook and I said to people, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a 50 years later tribute to Sparks. Are there any bands that you guys would like to hear? Because I was keen to get some input from the Sparks fan base. I just wanted it to be, it's kind of for them as well, So I kind of wanted Sparks fans to have some input on it. And I was thinking maybe they throw up a band that I hadn't considered. And the band Silvery came up a few times and must have been at least 4 times in the various groups. So I listened to them and I thought, they're clearly massively, if you've heard Silvery's music, Sparks, well, other than that, maybe XTC, but Sparks are clearly a massive influence on them. So I thought they would be would be ideal. They would be perfect. So I emailed James from the band and said, "This is what we're doing. Would you be interested?" And they said, "Well, yeah, Sparks are our main influence. Absolutely." Um, so it was nice to have a band that was kind of selected by Sparks fans as well on there. So yeah, they were a band I didn't really know. I've grown to love them um,
Mhm.
since they've done this track for us. I've listened to quite a bit of their music, and it's really quite up my street. So, but yeah, they're not really a heavy band, are they? They're kind of they call themselves Victorian circus punk. So they kind of have that kind of weird carnival kind of vibe. They sound a bit like do you know the band Cardiacs?
I do not know.
No, they're like a cult UK rock band
Mhm.
who have this kind of like weird circus kind of punk sound. And this is the closest that I've got to like getting this band Cardiacs, who are sadly no longer around because the main guy died. Um, to get them to cover Sparks, so Silvery kind of are almost standing in for them in my eyes. And yeah, they're great. I really was really pleased, and was glad, like I said, to get someone from the Sparks community that they were interested in having actually on there. So good one.
Yeah, no, I think it's all good. And what kind of reception are you getting from the Sparks community so far?
Um, lots of nice words actually. Just today, I've seen some nice posts on Facebook of people that have had their CDs and vinyl through, and they're saying they're really enjoying listening to the album. I was just surprised how many positive comments we did. Obviously, you do get one or two negative ones. You do with everything. We've had quite a few over the years doing these because some people think that by doing these cover versions, it's kind of sacrilege, or you're almost replacing the original versions, and they no longer exist. These are now the new versions, and that's just not true. It's these are different things that stand alone and stand apart from the original recordings.
Well, you and
Um,
I think exactly alike. I mean,
yeah,
if it was note for note recordings of the original songs, then yeah, it's a
yeah,
legitimate conversation.
that's
But to
what
me,
the point. Yeah,
every
yeah,
all these artists really are bringing something to it, and it's all in the name of paying tribute to an amazing album that has endured for 50 years for good reason.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Exactly. I hope that's why. I mean, that's why we kind of call it 50 years later. The gimmick behind what we do is, it's 50 years to the day that it comes out on. So we're doing an album that's 50 years old, and it's celebrating. I mean, unfortunately with Sparks, I should have done a 45 years later one and done the number one in heaven, really, shouldn't I? Looking at what they've been doing themselves over the last few weeks, I didn't realize they would be doing that. But
Yeah. Are you,
but
uh, are
yeah, it's
you,
nice for us to be doing something different.
well, now how about you? Are you a Sparks fan? It sounds like you had this in mind. This was the album you wanted to do. So are you a fan of all their work, or is it just a couple of their albums in particular?
I love it all. I'm a new Sparks fan. I think I might have talked about this with when we were on the show with Larry that time, but I came to Sparks through Annette um, because I'm quite a big sort of film buff, big movie fan, and I saw Annette and I knew who Sparks were. Obviously, working in the music industry, they're recognizable people, and they're in that first scene of the movie. Obviously knew This Town, I knew Number One in Heaven, I knew Amateur Hour, but I never really delved into the music any more than that. So after watching Annette and loving the music in that, I thought I need to check this band out. So that was the new album at the time was the Steady Drip Drip Drip. So that's what I did. I thought I'll listen to that one. That's the current album, and yeah, the year after, I think that was at the end of 2021. For the entire year 2022, I listened to pretty much nothing but Sparks. So it's so much of it.
Really?
Yeah, I
Well,
tracked
good for
down every
you.
single one. Yeah, every single album on vinyl, every single possible compilation. Got it all, and pretty much a proper deep dive into the whole thing. Um, and yeah, and then that was around the time that it was the gestation of the 50 years later project sort of took shape, and it was just all good timing. But yeah, to me, it's a new musical discovery still for me. I'm in my 40s, and they've been around my entire life, and I've only started listening to them in the last couple of years. But like I said, I listen to little else at least
Well,
for 20.
I am in my mid 60s and I've been listening to him for probably 50 years now, and it's a new
Yeah,
musical discovery for me every time I put on one of their albums.
yeah, that's the joy of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's they're very special. very
And
special. They've
one of the
become by far and away my favorite band, I think, over the last few years. By
well,
far.
well, you're in good company here. It is amazing because one of the things that the internet has allowed is for conversations like these and for people who are thinking about this stuff. And so you go back and you listen to the albums in different ways. For example, um, uh, the Gratuitous Sax album was
Yeah,
one I'd always liked, but it was after hearing people talk about it, it made me really go back and listen to it and appreciate it in a whole new way.
yeah. That's one of the main positive things that you get from the internet, isn't it? This kind of connection where you can talk about something and open someone's eyes in a way. Paul's channel, Metasparks. I mean, that makes me think constantly about the lyrics and about the whole, overarching concept, if there is one. And it's stuff like that you would never have come across before the internet,
Yeah, I mean,
unless you were
Paul,
lucky enough to know of someone like that. And
yeah.
that's one of the best things about the internet, being able to connect with people with similar interests.
Well, it's great that it's given him an opportunity to share his thoughts, and to really think
Absolutely, yeah.
through and get feedback from people and develop his thinking a little bit. And, he has a unified theory.
He does, yeah, yeah.
He really
And,
does. Yeah.
and he's definitely going to prove it over time.
Yeah. Well, at some point he's going to have to ask them, I think,
I
but,
think so.
but part of
I
the
wonder
fun is not
if
knowing. Part of the fun to me, is not knowing
they wouldn't
what they're
say,
really
would
up to.
they? Even if they'd watched all of his videos and they were like, yes, this is true. Yes, this is true. They would never admit it. So that would spoil the mythos a little bit. So we would never truly know. But I'd like to think that they're aware of it. They're quite sort of
Oh, I'm sure
hands
they're
on
aware of it. Yeah.
with the internet. Yeah, yeah. I have emailed the manager asking, to be able to send some copies through. I've not heard anything back, but I'd like my overarching goal, other than to make something for Sparks fans, was to get something in their hands so they could hear it as well. Because it'd be nice for them to hear the influence that they have in a genre of music which is a little bit removed from what they do. They've not really dabbled in heavier music before, so to show them that they're influencing heavy bands as well is a cool thing. So hopefully one day I may be able to get them some copies. That would be nice.
I guarantee you they're going to hear it, and I can't guarantee how they'll react, but my guess is that they'll say, "Yeah, this is really cool."
I hope so.
I don't see
Even if they
why.
didn't like it, even if they didn't like it, I'd be happy because it's a reaction, isn't it? If it evokes an emotional response,
Mhm.
then I guess that's good.
Yeah.
So even if they said, "Oh, this is awful," but they've heard it, I guess that's something, eh?
So,
Yeah,
so what's your secret pleasure Sparks album? What are one or two that people might be surprised to hear really became favorites of yours?
I'm a massive fan of Terminal Jive.
Ha!
Um, Massive fan of Terminal Jive. When we did the ranking, it was quite high up for me, and I think it was for Dan as well. I just love the sound on there. I know the Moroder one before, the production on that is incredible, but I think this was mainly produced by Howard Faltermeyer. He was kind of his assistant, wasn't it? And yeah, I love the sound on it. I know it's a controversial one because Ron claims that he didn't really play on it, and they had so many songs rejected for it. But When I'm With You is, it's one of the most beautiful songs ever written. So yeah, that one for me. I know a lot of Sparks fans aren't such big fans of it, so that's probably one of the most controversial choices you could say. But
I love it.
I,
I love it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
excellent. I
No, I
don't
mean, I
dislike.
love the fact that that's the one you came up with.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't
yeah,
love the
yeah.
album as much as you do, but
Maybe
yeah.
not. I love interior design as well. I mean, ever since seeing them play Toughest Girl on the tour last year, because
Wasn't that a treat?
I went four shows, um, and obviously seen them play it four times, and that became one of my favorite songs last year. Just seeing them play that,
Wasn't that a
such a
treat?
surprise.
Wasn't that a
Yeah,
treat? Yeah.
sublime. It was it's a deep cut, isn't it? And it's not the kind of thing that you would expect them to play, but that's Sparks for you, isn't it? You expect the unexpected.
Yeah,
So
there's so many songs that they didn't play that you would have expected them to play, but they didn't. They played that. They played Beaver O'Lindy, and
of
they knocked
course,
it. I
yeah,
mean, it was
yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
When you've got that kind of a discography, it must be such a challenge to put a set list together for them at this stage. that must be one of the most challenging things they have to deal with when it comes to the live show, is choosing what to play and what does miss out at this point now. When they've got a new album, then you think, well, you've got to play 5-6 songs from the new album as well. You've only got maybe 20, 22 songs on a set list.
Yeah.
You've got to play This Town. You've got to play Number One in Heaven at this stage. You know, what else is going to miss out?
Yeah.
It must be really tough. But what a job to have, eh? You know.
Yeah, I think they give a lot of thought to it. For me, hearing Bon Voyage, for example, of all I think besides This Town, those are the only songs they played from those 3 albums that they're probably the most well known for. Which that's such a daring decision. It really speaks so highly of them. Also, it's a personal favorite song. Yeah,
I love. Yeah, it's my favorite Sparks album, Propaganda. So that's I wanted to do Propaganda as well, but you know, finances wouldn't allow it for 2 releases in 1 year. But
that would have been amazing. That would have been amazing.
It would have been.
Yeah.
Originally, we planned to do because we did bonus tracks for the CD version.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a version of Lost and Found on there by a band called The Slightest Bits, who are Sparks fans. They're all quite a young band, and they're active on the Sparks groups. So that's how I found them. They were on the Sparks fan groups, and I sort of messaged them and said, would you fancy doing a version of Lost and Found for me for the CD, for a bonus track? And they did a great version of that. And we also had another band doing Barbecue Tea. But originally we did have a band that were going to do Never Turn Your Back on Mother Earth as another bonus track. And unfortunately the band, they were an older band and they'd been around for quite a few years. Had some issues with the lineup, and they just decided to call it a day, literally 2 weeks before they were going to record. It was very sad.
Well, that's too bad, but I got to say the version of Barbecue Tea that's on there is really one of the treats, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I'm pleased to hear that. That's an in-house project, Dis & Co, between Dan from the label and our engineer Josh. That's their synth pop project that they do on the side.
Yeah.
Some of the reviews that we've had back actually do pick that one out as being one of the better tracks on it, which was very pleasing, because you think with bonus tracks sometimes they're a bit, you know, they're extra, aren't they? Maybe the extra thought doesn't go into doing it like on an original, you know, song, but with these on here, they're both top notch.
Absolutely. And so with that, let me just strongly urge people to use those links below and get a hold of a copy of this if you haven't already. It's great stuff. Tim, thank you so much for coming and talking about the album. Any last words on the album you want to make sure you get in?
No, it's just been a pleasure to work with all the bands on this one. It's been a pleasure to prepare something that I'm hoping the Sparks fan community is gonna enjoy and love, and if they're gonna buy a physical version of it, to cherish for years to come, and put it with their Sparks records like I've done with my copy at home. Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to work on something else Sparks related down the line. I mean, like I said, they've become my favorite band over the last couple of years, so any chance I get to try and do something Sparks related, I think it may happen again. You never know. Watch this space.
Well, I think it's great, and thank you for doing it. I should thank you. It's obviously a labor of love. It's appreciated, and you've been a great guest. And to everyone who's been watching, this is the content you get, folks. So please do subscribe. I want more and more people to hear from Tim and from all our other great guests. So subscribe and share and do all those great things. And I will be back with a new episode very soon. Until then, let me just say, hasta mañana. Monsieur.
Thank you. Thanks, Monte.